One.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Sidna Trimmel. I am the April board treasurer, and I'm going to be moderating your meeting today. Thank you for joining us. You're here to listen to the session called Peer Support for SILCs. And I have a little script I want to read because you haven't heard this before this week, so I'm going to be the first one. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started today. First, when you scroll over the screen, a menu bar will pop up. Depending on what device you're on, you can find that menu bar at the top or at the bottom of your screen. This is where you will find the closed captioning for today's session. You can view the captioning by selecting the CC tab on the menu bar. For sign language interpreting, you can find the interpreter on your screen. If you are only able to see the speaker, make sure that you're in gallery view so that you can see the interpreter and the presentation at the same time. You can find the option to change the view at the top of your screen under the tab for view. If you have technical issues, please use the chat feature to let us know. You can find the word bubble in that same menu bar. Once that is selected, that will allow you to follow along with the chat or add in your comments. If you would like to turn the chat feature off, if you are using a screen reader, you can do that by pressing Alt and the letter H. To ask a question or make a comment, you can also select the hand option on the menu bar, as that allows us to know that you have a question. For those of you on the phone today or who are using keystrokes, we ask that you press star or the asterisk sign 9 or Alt and the letter Y on your keypad to raise your hand. We will then let you know that you can unmute. You can select the unmute option by pressing Alt and the letter A if you're using keystrokes. Also, if you join in the conversation, please be sure and keep the background noise down as much as possible to allow us to hear you more clearly. And as a last reminder, April and our conference is a safe and inclusive place for marginalized communities. We ask that everyone present in this session today treat each other with respect and that you enter this and every session with good intentions. This includes respecting names, pronouns, and other personal identifiers and avoiding the use of harmful or derogatory language. I also want to let you know that the session is being recorded, but it's not going to be posted on the site. So that makes it kind of more of a safe and more personal place for you to be able to ask any questions that you want to ask. And it's not going to go out onto the website. But any material or resources that are going to be shared, that are going to be put down in the chat, that material and those resources, any links and so on, will be on the website so that you can go back and find them. But the actual content of sharing your stories or asking your questions today will not be shared with anybody else outside of this meeting. So I would like to turn it over to our presenter, my good friend, Sandra.
Hey everyone, my name is Sandra Brighton-Gross-Bitter. Thank you very much, Sidna, for that introduction and the housekeeping. I'm going to quickly introduce myself and then kind of turn it over to the group here. But like I said, my name is Sandra. I am currently the Director of Training at ILRU. I recently transitioned into that position, but previously I was the Executive Director for the Texas SILC, and I was there for almost 10 years. And so I feel like this is very much still my peer group. And so I'm excited to be here with you today. I think it would be great if we had a chance to talk as a group and share what's going on in our states, and if there are issues that are coming up in your council. This is a great opportunity to also hear from your peers, because there's a good chance one of us has experienced a similar situation. And if not, we can definitely collectively point you in a particular direction to get more information or additional support from those additional resources. So real quick on a visual description, I am a Hispanic female with dark curly hair. I wear glasses and I'm sitting in my home office. And my dog is behind me. So if you hear any snoring or barking, that's his participation. So bear with me on that one. You're welcome to put questions in the chat. And Sidna will be helping me voice those questions. I'll try to grab them as well. But this is really a time for us to share together. So what I would encourage you to turn on your videos if you're comfortable, and feel free to unmute yourselves as you would like to interject into a conversation. Of course, you're welcome to raise your hand. Actually, do we have the raise your hand feature? I don't even see it on here, but if you have the raise your hand feature.
We do. It's
okay.
For me, it's under reactions down on my lower menu bar.
Oh, okay. Then feel free to do that and we can call on you, whoever sees it, but also feel free to just come off of mute and let's have a conversation and a discussion, because that's really what it's all about. So let me see. Before we get started, I do want to make a quick announcement, and it's something that's coming up with ILRU and ACL, is that there will be a webinar session on October 19th, so this coming Wednesday, in which the relationship between SILCs and the DSE will be discussed, and some clarifying information will be available from our friends at ACL. So I would encourage you all to attend that session. It is free. I'm going to put the link in the chat where you can find out more information and register for that session. You do have to register in advance. ASL and CART will be provided, but hopefully if there's any DSE questions today, hopefully they'll be answered there. So to kick us off, who would like to go first? I know I can tell by the names, this is a very lively group. I've seen you on other sessions. And there are some names that I'm not so familiar with. So I think we have a mix of SILC executive directors. Maybe you could wave if you're comfortable. SILC staff, I'm sure. And if we have any SILC board members, do we have any SILC board members in this group? I'm hoping so. I always love it when we have that perspective as a group too. Okay, looks like we have a little bit of everything here. We had responses from SILC board members, SILC staff, and SILC executive directors. So I'm excited about this conversation. So what's the first thing we should talk about? Does anybody have a pressing issue or topic that they would like to bring up? Tyler.
Yeah, this is Tyler. I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room. This whole thing with the spill being put off a year.
Yes.
I don't know how much information everyone has. I got a little bit more today about it, and I'm just kind of wondering how everyone feels about that, what everyone's thinking, because I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit. I'm frustrated mostly, I think, but maybe I'm mistaken about that, and I'm new, so I'm kind of trying to see if there's another perspective, or if I'm missing something.
That's a really good question. And I know there was some discussion, it might have been as part of the SILC EDs group about this too. Is this impacting anyone else? with regards to their spill schedule or plans?
Sandra, this is Sidna. I can say that for NASILC, we've received some feedback from some people that are very happy it's happening, and some feedback from people who are not very happy it's happening. And that's a mix of people who are really thoroughly, in the process and trying to get down to the finish line to get their spill out, down to people who have no cooperation whatsoever out of their centers and we're really starting to sweat it. So the feedback that we're getting is kind of mixed, where some people are happy and some aren't so happy. So that's what we're here.
Tyler, do you want to talk, if you're comfortable sharing, a little bit more information about the concerns that you had?
I had worked really hard to kind of set up what I think was working pretty well for spill development. And now I have a lot of questions from the people on that committee, because I actually managed to gather like SIL staff and SIL directors, and our DSC was in, it's a group of like 20 people. And now they're all kind of awash in this sea of, uncertainty, because they're thinking, well, if it's not due for a year, why are we doing all this work? So I'm kind of losing, and had really good momentum. I'm losing some of that steam. The other problem is that we have part of our spill is to have a retreat as a network. And
Okay.
we've been in the planning of that. And one of the things that I came up with was, you know what, we all have to sign that spill when it's due anyways. So everything that we've been planning around that has been focused on implementation and signatures of the new spill. Like, our entire planning process has been, let's make this about, hey, we've got this new thing coming out, let's start it off with a bang. And now that's kind of, I mean, admittedly, it's probably selfish. It's probably only affecting my state in this way, but also it was, I mean, that's where the frustration came in, was like all of our planning has been sort of centered around that date, and they just kind of pushed it back because, well, I'm not exactly sure why. There wasn't any communication that it was even a possibility until it was what was actually going to happen. So it kind of came out of nowhere.
Got it.
Wasn't,
Yeah, so they've done this before. I think it was fiscal year 1920, where the new spill instrument was being shepherded through the official process through OMB, which goes through a multi-month process of getting approval and public comment. And so they had delayed the process as part of that. And at that time, I was kind of along with you, Tyler, in the sense that we had created a lot of momentum within our state to kind of move forward. And one of the things is that you can always make a decision as a state too, to continue that momentum and move forward, and do a substantial amendment for your spill, and instead of just doing a technical amendment and going ahead and move forward with significant changes if if you decide that works for you. But I'm sure ACL will provide some additional clarifications about that amendment process, but just know that was an option last time. And so it might be possible this go around. Esther, you have your hand up. Hey.
Hi, I'm Esther Radajeski. I'm the coordinator of the SILC in Kentucky. I am a middle-aged lady with a blue sweater eating my lunch. I just was going to, you already said what I was just about to say. I had talked to someone from a different state yesterday, and they're going to just continue with their new spill, but just file it as a substantive amendment. So, and then there'll be already a head start next year where it will be very easy to repackage that for the new spill. because they have all these ideas and programs they're planning on starting. And so I think we might go ahead and do that as well, if that's okay with ACL. So that way you don't feel like you have to just wait around for a year before you can do anything new. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Great idea. And it looks like Grace T has their name up or hand up.
Hi, I wanted to introduce myself.
Hey.
I'm a part-time youth specialist just because I have to work part-time because of some of my disabilities. I have a severe heart condition, but I work in both North. I work for paid work in South Carolina, and then I do a lot of volunteer work in North Carolina. I'm wearing my youth lead NC shirt right now. I don't know if Kay's on here. Kay from the NCYLF. I was volunteer staff on the NCYLF. So yeah, that's just me. Do I need a visual description?
If you would like to provide a visual description, you're welcome to.
Okay, I am kind of like an androgynous looking white person with short brown hair. I usually wear glasses because I'm legally blind, but unfortunately they broke. Very sad. I have a lanyard on just because it's my work lanyard. I like to think I'm usually smiling most of the time. Yeah. I don't know if this is offensive or not, but I'm a lesbian and I look very much like a stereotypical lesbian, just to sort of put that image in your head for any of our blind friends. I don't mind saying that about myself. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Grace. It looks like Jamie has her hand up. Hey, Jamie.
Hey. So this is Jamie from Idaho, and Tyler, like you, we definitely had the frustration just because we had done, started working on our spill in January and had it open through, the middle of September, and we collected 658 surveys, did 31 town hall meetings around the state, and did 2 virtual meetings. And so we had a lot of information that it was just kind of hurry up and halt. But after going through the emotions, it actually is kind of going to work out nice because, like Sandra had said, this isn't the first time they've done this. But we captured a lot of stuff that was not what we were expecting. And so we're really going to take the time. Our skill planning team is still going to take the time every month and meet and go through everything, but it's going to give us a little bit more time to kind of fine tune what we heard from around Idaho. But we totally feel you, Tyler. But look at it, it could be a good thing.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Jamie. I would love to know how you managed to do 31 town halls. Is that what you said, 31?
Yes.
Okay, please share your process, because I would love to see how you organized this and handled it.
It was exhausting. So Mel, our executive director, took the eastern part of Idaho. I took northern Idaho. And we were gone about a week each. Sometimes we do 2 town halls a day in various locations. They were about 3 hours. We scheduled 3 hours. We worked in our SILCs did a lot of work as far as they found the locations. They really marketed this, but yeah. And then we hit our local area. If it was within about a 4-hour drive, we would go there, do a town hall, and come back. And that was about 2 months worth of drives. So, but we hit senior centers for their lunch. We found that was a really good place, and it was kind of funny because they don't say that they have a disability necessarily. Because and I'd sit there and like, you've got a hearing aid, you've got a walker, you've got, but they don't have a disability, but they talked about their kids and their grandkids. But
Right.
so we got some really good lunches at senior settings too.
They just don't identify that way in the older generation, I've noticed. Because disability is just a natural part of aging.
Yep.
And people don't like to consider themselves disabled because of ableism, and internalized ableism. So that's why we don't get a lot of elderly reaching out to our organization. So when I offer, if I see an elderly person that looks like they might be a good candidate, I say, I work for an organization that helps disabled people and the elderly, because they're not gonna, the elderly are disabled people, but they don't like that one.
Yep. And that's
so-
what I found too. When I asked my mom, I said, what do you say? And she's like, we can't hear, we can't walk. And I was like, okay. And that's what we found
Yeah.
in
So
with
like
the,
what AARP is
Mhm.
like, they don't talk about disability, they just say aging. So if I see like an elderly person and they tell me that they're at, because I love to talk to old people because I feel like I relate to them because I've had all of those problems that they have since I was 2 years old. So I love to talk to old people, and old people love to talk to me because I've been the same way they are since I was 2 years old. But I say I work for an organization that helps disabled people and the elderly. By the way, you can drop my name a little bit, and then they that gets them connected with the organization, because they're sometimes people just don't want to identify that way. Like a lot of people in the disability community don't like the term special needs, but that term was actually invented by people with intellectual disabilities before parents co-opted it. So they tell people, oh, you're not allowed to say special needs, and it's people with the intellectual disability, and it's like, no, that's their term. We know that it's bad now because parents co-opted it, but why is that their fault? Like, you can't tell people they're not allowed to identify a certain way. So even though I'm not supposed to, I say elderly, disabled, special needs, because different people have different identity words. I don't like it when parents use it, but like if I'm talking to a intellectually disabled person, that's their history. So that's not like offensive, like SILCs seem to think it is. SILCs seem to think it is because parents co-opted it, but people with IDD, I was diagnosed with severe autism as a child, and I was referred to as special needs. So like, yeah, no, that was my first disability community. So don't tell me I'm not allowed to say that if I want to, you know?
are correct. And there's a lot of other communities that don't use the term disabled or disability. So yeah, you are
Yeah.
correct.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jamie. That sounds exhausting, like you said, but it sounds like you really did get some good feedback, especially if it wasn't what you were expecting. I always think that that's a sign of success, in the sense of that you're possibly reaching a population that you might not have reached before. So that's pretty neat. Let's see. I'm trying to see if we have any other hands up.
I didn't see any.
Okay. All right. So I know spills are a big topic. There's so much to do with them. And Tyler had a really great session with Dr. Anderson earlier this week on SILCs and spills. So if you missed that, I think it would be really awesome to go back and to catch that on the recording, because I think they had some great conversations as well. Let's see. Would anybody like to jump in on a particular topic?
Sandra, what about what people are doing in various aspects of peer support?
Oh, I made some great strides with that. With my, I shouldn't call them my kids because that's condescending, but with my young people, we've been doing a Discord. It's like an app that a lot of young people use. We've gotten a lot of interaction out of that. We've been doing game nights, because you have to be, I mean, I'm 23 and I started out when I was 15. So you have to kind of listen to younger people and stay hip, you know? So we do Discord, we do game nights, because we got to be hip so that we can learn from the young people. We do accessible Dungeons and Dragons, just whatever attracts young people. And the best way to find that out is to ask young people. Like, it sounds super cheesy and like old person to be like, hey, what are the kids doing these days? But yeah, what are the kids doing these days? That's the key. So like, yeah, so I always ask my kids that like at the end of the session because they don't know that it's related to their disabilities. It's helping me be more accommodating to them and their disabilities and their youth. So we always do that at the end of all of our more formal sessions. It's just like, let's chat for a little bit about what you're doing these days. And they think it's just fun, but we're actually learning something about from them secretly, because you got to kind of trick teenagers a little bit sometimes, because they can be a little bit surly sometimes. But yeah, so you just got to really get with the kids. And I want to go even younger because I feel like by the time they get to me, they have so much internalized ableism, and it's much easier to teach a good habit than it is to undo a bad habit. So right now we don't have the funding, but I would love to like have a job that was like just like really little kids, because my autism, I feel very connected to my inner child. I have PTSD and kind of like DID type symptoms, and so I quite literally have an inner child that comes out sometimes. And so I think I would do very well with like really young children, like 4 years old. That's about when my PTSD gets triggered. That's about where the age I go to is about 4 years old. So I think I would do very well with them. And I'm actually going to talk to the executive director about basically creating a new position for myself, because I can only work part-time. And so I'm hoping I'm going to leave my position where I'm at now and create a part-time position with myself, just working with the babies. Because like, if I wasn't in disability, I would probably be a preschool teacher. So I want to kind of do that, but disability related, because I love all that stuff, like little song stuff. I'll do it like unironically. But that's where I think we need to go if we have the funding.
Cool. That
So.
sounds awesome. Definitely a youth focus is something a lot of SILCs are working on right now. And so if others would like to jump in to the conversation and kind of tell us what's going on in their states, that would be awesome. It looks like we have some folks that were active in the chat. Andy, if I can say that you introduce yourself as being a new member of the Utah SILC. Would you like to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Okay, so yeah, I just got in last month. If that's Tylee can confirm on that. Yeah, it's going really good. So plus, I've been also the chairman in my YLC for Utah, so it's been really helpful to know. Sorry, I'm scatterbrained today. Know what I can do to help my peers and know what's going on in the USILC and collaborate. So
awesome. Well, welcome. Thanks for sharing. It looks like I got a question through Messenger, and it is, our SILC is looking to increase our membership, and we're considering more ex officio members. Is there a set number that each SILC should have besides DORS and DOD? I'm assuming those are state acronyms for some providers, and other agencies would be of benefit. Interested in hearing what other states do. Would anybody like to talk about how their ex officios are structured? And this was from Rose from Maryland.
Tyler has raised his hand.
Oh, go for it, Tyler.
Hi, Rose. I don't know if there's a specific number, but the way that we kind of do it in Wisconsin is we have Department of Health Services, who is our DSE. They have a representative as well that's an ex officio, and Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. The other thing we'll do is we'll every 3 years we set up advisory committees across the network, which are kind of advocacy groups. And if there is, so right now, 2 of them are kind of healthcare related, but one of them is transportation. So the DOT representative also sits as an ex officio because we're kind of talking about transportation issues with the whole network. So whatever kind of advocacy things we're doing, we'll try to pull someone in from the state that sort of represents that department so that we have a little bit better ability to communicate with them and kind of a direct line. So when something happens at DOT, we kind of know about it pretty quickly, which has been really helpful.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate that. I enjoyed your webinar the other day too. We have in our state, we have a lot of transportation and housing issues, and we don't have representatives from those agencies. We do have one from the Department of Disabilities and the Rehabilitation. But that's why I was wondering if what other states did, if they had representatives from our ex officio members, or if they just did advisory committees. So I appreciate your answer. Yes, thank you.
Now, something to remember when you do add official ex officio members that are appointed by the governor to your SILC is to really look at that Rehab Act language and what it says about your ratios for people with disabilities. So that would have potentially impact your ratio numbers because it increases the total number of individuals serving on your board. So really that's something that in Texas we were paying attention to, that we wanted to add additional ex officios to bring in that stakeholder involvement and those agency involvement. We also ran into an issue where if we put too many ex officios in, then our ratios were no longer acceptable to be in compliance with the Rehab Act. So another option that you could do is to create liaison positions where you have liaisons from specific state agencies or groups that aren't official ex officios and aren't appointed by the governor. That's another workaround. Love to hear what other states are doing on this as well. If anyone has anything to chime in or another topic. All right. Well, let's see. So something that we hear a lot about is the work folks are doing to make sure their SILCs are in compliance with their indicators. And one of those things is board training and trying to make sure that your boards have access, your board members have access to the training that they need. Does anybody have a really great training program or protocol that they would like to share that they create either for onboarding new members or if they have it as a regular process throughout the year for their board members as you go? Oh, Dora, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Sandra. This is
Hey.
Dora with the Silk of Tennessee. My pronouns are she and her, and my visual is a black screen with my name on it because I'm having a really bad hair day.
That's okay.
I turned that on and saw my hair, and nope, off went the camera. But I just wanted to say that for as far as training, of course, I got with Ann McDaniel at the beginning, and she was gracious enough to send me her new member orientation. So we kind of Tennessee-fied that for all new members when they come on. And then we offer them a mentor, especially when you have someone that may be coming aboard that's never served on a board or a council before. That kind of helps put them at ease. And I usually always invite one of my council members to join us to give a council perspective there. And then after that, we have individual training plans where I meet with them annually and discuss what it is they would like to train on. Of course, we use that handy dandy ILRU tool as well to see what it is that they are not familiar with. And then we go from there. I try to bring in providers of different types or agencies into each of the quarterly meetings to present to the council to widen their perspective or knowledge, within Tennessee. And that's a training too, as well. So we do quite a few things. I also put out a monthly newsletter, if you will, to the council that always reminds them of the dates, tells them what the Silk is up to, what national focus it is, for the month, October is, employment awareness, whatever. And then I always plug ILRU trainings on there because there are some fantastic trainings on there for board members to go through. So I think we try to really come at it from every angle that we can, from a local perspective to a national one. And I would be happy to hear any other ideas that we can add to what we're doing.
Oops, sorry, I was on mute. That sounds great. I like that. Amy, you have your hand up.
How do I put my hand down? Lower hand. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm here. I'm trying to start my video. I'm having a bad hair day too, but there I am. I am a white 50-something lady with brown hair and a gray sweatshirt on. I look like it's my day off. I'm in my home office and my background says New York State Disability Rights Hall of Fame, which is one of the things that we've been doing for the past 6 years, and finding peers who have really kind of made a mark in the disability rights community and inducting them into a Hall of Fame every year. But what I wanted to mention is that we engaged in diversity, equity, and inclusion training this past year, and invited as many members of SILCs as wanted to attend, and also our SILC board. And we have 42 centers in New York, so that was a lot. It was a 6-week training, and so it was for people to learn what's needed to be more inclusive in general, and also how to be more respectful during meetings. We had some bullying going on. I won't be specific about it, but we had some issues that we had to address, and also find a way to move forward and focus on the future. At the end of the training, we actually developed a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that monitors and facilitates change and equity all the time. So it's something that's new, and we're not really certain how well it's going to work in the long term, but short term, I think things are really changing for the better.
That sounds awesome. How was the, when you went through that training, because it sounds like it was pretty extensive, right? 6 weeks with
It was.
your SILC and your SILs. So how many SILs participated?
It wasn't, sometimes there were a couple people from one SIL and sometimes there was nobody. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
but I think, you know, it was really board training, and we
Mhm.
opened it up to SIL. So it was more focused on the SILC members.
Got it.
But I think it could be good across SILs. The only problem was the bully did not attend any of the trainings, which was very frustrating. So, you
Yeah.
know, luckily this person is not going to be on the council much longer. But it was very frustrating to sit there and be trained in something that you know that the person that most needs the training is not even there.
Yeah, that is
I don't know how to prevent that
hard.
kind of situation, but that's what happened.
Yeah. Understandable. Let's see. Grace, do you have your hand up, or was that was still left over from before? It might be.
Hi. What I was gonna say is like what we do to make sure we're keeping on top of things that I really like that we do that my supervisor came up with. We do like bi-weekly staff meetings that are optional for like the general staff. So you don't have to come if you can't. And then as the youth team, as like the youngest youth team with actual youth on it, we meet once a week. And it's mandatory. So, because we have a
Okay.
youth that's not actually made up of youth, but the team that I work for, like we have a youth team that works with youth, and then the team that I work for is the one that's made up of youth, if that makes sense.
Got it. I think so. Awesome.
So just
All right. So I see a lot of new names here on the screen, and I would love to hear from some other areas of the country that might be embarking on some new activities, or if there's some problem solving that we can help as a group. Feel free to jump in. Like I said, this group is pretty diverse, and we have been able to share some of the issues that we've been dealing with as individual states, and had some great great direction provided by our peers. So don't hesitate to either reach out here in this session today, or of course follow up with folks that are participating. That's always a good way of getting some additional information. But so we heard a little bit from Tyler about SPIL. Now, how are things going with your current SPIL? Because you're in your last and final year of the current SPIL, and I know some folks have already embarked on the process of drafting your new SPIL, but how are things going? How did monitoring the progress on those objectives, the consumer satisfaction, how did that go with regards to partnership with the centers? I would love to hear anything that you all have.
This is Sidna. I'll speak up.
Sure.
Here's a question for you or anybody in regards to the current SPIL or moving forward. When you have centers that don't participate whatsoever. So in a current SPIL, if you have centers who aren't following through, how would that be rectified? Going forward, if you have centers that don't want to participate in the writing of the new SPIL, how would that be rectified?
That's a good question. Does anybody have any great advice for Sidna? I know for us, we've struggled with that. And I can't say for us anymore, but in Texas, they previously struggled with that. With regards to reporting on activities, for example, the SILC's always in a tough position, knowing that your network, the IL network, is doing some incredible things, but getting down to the process of reporting those things in order to show progress on the plan, or to show even progress as you move forward with other advocacy issues with your legislature, or something like that. Sometimes that can be difficult if folks aren't participating. So one thing I know that that has really helped in the past, and I think Jamie is a good example of this, is making sure that when some of that initial outreach for needs assessment and things like that are going out, is making sure that those centers are involved in those events. That creates a level of almost an ownership of the process, realizing that their community, their constituents are the ones that are providing input on the statewide plan, and showing that the value of their community's voice. So I think that that's really great that some SILCs have gotten centers involved in those town halls or official hearings. I think that's a good practice. Sarah Goldman, did you have something to add to this?
Yeah, hi, this is Sarah with the Florida Silk. So we host weekly IL network calls for all of our centers here in Florida, and it's just a good way for them to catch up on different issues that they're having and collaborating with one another. So it's a good way for our Silk to stay involved with the network. We also have just recently completed our needs assessment, sent it out to them, but we hosted 4 different town halls last year that were virtual, and we hosted them through each of the centers for independent living in our state. So we're including our centers with our town hall, or kind of like virtual forums is what we're calling them. But that's a way that we're trying to connect with them with the needs assessment, so they can just be in tune and having the consumers learn about the state plan and what our Silk does.
Hi, what's the name of your silk?
Are you talking to me, Grace?
Yeah, I just have a friend in Florida, and I was just wondering like the names of different silks.
Yeah, I can DM you. I'm with the Florida Independent Living Council.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So in the chat, it was asked by Susie on individual SILs, what kinds of reasons are there for not signing on to the state plan? If that question is for me, because I had asked the other question, the answer to that is because they don't want to engage with SILC at all. You know, to try to include them in anything in the process, from the town hall meetings to virtually anything. There's just a complete disconnect, and therein lies the problem. Dora, and you're muted.
Hi there, and I'm going to lower my hand while I'm thinking about it too, or I just keep it up. Anyway, I'm very fortunate in Tennessee, and I've mentioned this before, that the Centers for Independent Living are very involved with the SILC. And like Florida, we do our community conversations through the SILs. You know, they kind of host them, whether it be in person or virtually, and that helps us. And then a few years ago, before I was with the SILC, I was with the center, we developed a statewide consumer needs assessment. And so all of the centers in Tennessee utilize the same consumer needs assessment. So on a quarterly basis, they kind of send me that snapshot of what that looks like. So quarterly, we're able to see what is trending in the state as far as what is a success, right, or what is not working. And so that's helped us too. But and then it's I really do try very hard to make as many in-person or virtual events that the centers are having, because that gives me a great time to talk with the consumers and hear them out, or listen to what it is that's going on in their world, and then that, you know, kind of brings it to a statewide focus. And again, that's because Tennessee Centers for Independent Living, you know, work very well together, and I'm very proud of that. And I just, boy, I have to tell you, I just, you've got to be in between a rock and a hard spot if that's not going on for you.
Thank you.
So Dora, if I can ask a follow-up question. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy just unmuted. Go ahead, Kathy.
Sorry, I was trying to, I'm not good at the whole hands thing. I was trying to find it, but anyway.
No, you're fine.
So I wonder if like a situation that Oklahoma has, and I know some other SILCs have had it too. With the first spill that I had to do, there was a little bit of tension, not anything like what Oklahoma faces, but we brought in a consultant to help us do our spill, and he came in for, well, he worked with us, you know, before he came down and did like a one-day meeting with us, and he looked over what we had, and we were kind of stuck in a rut where we thought we had to do things the same old way, and it had to be written the same, and then, you know, all that kind of BS. But he helped us to understand that we could do whatever we wanted with that spill, and we could really change things up, and we could really get away from how it had been. But he also helped us come together on that SILC aspect of it, where it didn't have to be, you know, like a fight the entire time. And he kind of helped us come together and have ownership by everybody. So we had all of the directors in the room, and we had myself and the SILC chair in the room. And I'll tell you, that helped tremendously. And then we were able to move on the next spill and not have to have a facilitator. But I highly recommend that for anybody. And I want to say it probably cost us about, it was less than $3,000 total. And that was with his travel expense and his fee. So it's David Hancock's. I highly recommend him. If anybody wants his information, I can give it to you. It has changed recently, but he's not the only one. There are probably there's probably more out there that can come in and help. But David had experience with being a SILC member and also being the director of a center. So he could see both perspectives and sides and the breakdown and understand what each side was really like, you know, what their maybe preconceived notions were of why they were tense going into it, or if there were conflicts already. So, you know, doesn't have to be him, but, you know, maybe a nonprofit trainer. There's usually nonprofit organizations throughout the nation. Usually each state has one. If not, your region would have one. But that would be another excellent idea to come in and just help you like figure out how to even get moving on that. Just my thought.
It's a really good idea. Having a kind of a neutral third party that everyone can agree to, just to get folks talking might be a good way to start.
And we've got about 8 minutes, 7 minutes left, Sandra.
Okay. All right. What other kind of issues are you all facing as we wind down from the calendar year, start up a new fiscal year? How's advocacy going within your individual states? Are you working on specific issues? How is that balance between advocacy and lobbying? It's always a tough line.
We're working on vaccination because we live in a very conservative state, and that's all I can really say about that. And COVID is both affecting people with disabilities and causing people to become people with disabilities. Although people with long COVID usually don't identify as people with disabilities yet. So we say that we can help with like long COVID too. So we just again use those different identity words, but because it's very stigmatized, especially if you never had a disability before and you're not used to having a disability, and then you get long COVID, and especially if you're anti-vaxxer, then people are like, oh, well, you put the disability community in danger for not getting a vaccine, and so now we're not going to help you. But they're still part of the disability community, so we still owe it to them to help them, even though they don't help us. So that's been kind of a tricky dynamic. So we've been doing a lot with vaccination. We can't really convince anybody, can't really be too pushy, or just kind of putting the facts out there and disrupting misinformation. You can't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do, but our vaccine clinics, free accessible vaccine drives have been very, very successful, because a lot of the times vaccination isn't fully accessible for people that have anxiety and like intellectual disabilities. They can't go to like the pharmacy and get one, so they accept, because they just don't have the time to accommodate, and so they're just not willing to accommodate. They just get very impatient if people with IDD try to get a vaccine. As someone with IDD, sometimes I have to move a little bit slower and think a little bit slower. And people don't always like that. I don't have an intellectual disability, but I have autism, which is a kind of a co-occurring community. And so I took my neighbors that have intellectual disabilities to the vaccine drive, and yeah. So that's, I would say, the biggest thing that we're doing right now.
Awesome. Are any other SILCs doing COVID activities, COVID related outreach or accessibility?
It looks like Susie has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Susie, I missed you. Go ahead. Hey, on mute.
Hi.
There we go.
Thank you. I started thinking when a couple of minutes ago somebody mentioned needs assessments, and I have a real problem with the way needs assessments are done. Not the methodology as much as the categories. I work with people with chemical and electrical hypersensitivities. A lot of us live out in the rural high desert areas in Arizona, and there are a few dozen in Tucson and some of the cities also. When I've taken active part in helping with needs assessments, it's always been, I've always wound up with an odd outcome, in that if 20 or 25 or 30 people with this kind of disability answer lots of questions and we think, oh good, this year we're going to be included, we're not. I mean, our specific access needs are not. Where we get put is other. And I'm unable to make the point so far that this community is not well served. And I think that we need emphasis on it. And now, when disabilities come up that I'm not used to working with, like people with long COVID, I think that's really critical. And at the same time, I have this really childish feeling like, hey, wait a minute, now we're going to pay attention to them, and the chemically and electrically poisoned people still can't get into the SILC stuff or the CILs. And
I understand.
I don't respect my attitude there, but I do want us to be included in the cross disability movement, but I want us to have our own little box to fill in.
So yeah, I totally understand that. And you're right, you often don't see that as a demographic box to check, or that it's a an accessibility issue or inclusive issue that is discussed all that often. And so you bring up a really good point. And one that I think we should all really think hard about as we're trying to reach new communities or underserved communities. How are we approaching them and making their voice heard? Thank you, Susie.
I'm really stumped about it. I was our silk chair a couple years ago. And I actually had a real tough time signing off on our plan. And I had to resign from that position right after having done it because we weren't in there. You know, it felt like saying, well, people with all disabilities have all these rights. And I keep thinking, well, yeah, ours aren't spelled out, you know, any place. And
Yeah, just when it's a rare condition like that, I have a very rare genetic disease. There are only 6 cases in the world. It's not that they don't want to accommodate you, it's just they don't know how to accommodate you. And sometimes you have to accommodate yourself like you do by living way out in the boonies. I have a lot of chemical sensitivities too. So I don't think it's that they don't want to accommodate you, but like people like us, if that's just hard to codify that into law because it's so rare. But I think usually most people are willing to do it, but like I really relate to what you're saying because I work at a SIL and they say that they're cross disability and they are cross disability and they really believe in that. But the way that it's set up is a little bit inaccessible to me because again, I have a condition that only 6 people in the world. So I'm actually meeting with the executive director to talk about accommodations for people with like rare illnesses and chronic illnesses, because sometimes you just need to talk to the person in charge. It's not that they don't want to do it, it's that they're busy and they need to be told outright because they just don't have that experience. So I'm meeting with our executive director next week, and I bet all of my ideas are the same as all of your ideas, but just like solidarity, like I definitely know where you're coming from with the chemical sensitivity and stuff, because that wasn't even recognized as a disease. It was so rare until like 5 years ago. So you got to keep that, you know, in mind. People would just say that that was made up until like 5 years ago. So, and that gaslighting too is really hard. So I just really emphasize with that and like the traditional medical system and traditional disability systems. You know, it's just hard sometimes. And I just wanted to say that I really hear you on that.
Thank you, Grace. I appreciate it. So, Sandra, we're out of time. So any last words before I close us out of here?
No, I just want to thank everyone for a fantastic discussion. Feel free to reach out at any time, and I'm excited that we had some good topics today. And I'm sure everyone will have a fantastic weekend. Had a long week of talking, right? So you had another session at the end, but you all had some great input, and I really appreciate your time and effort today.
Yes, I appreciate it from everybody too. I wish the session could have been longer to answer more questions, but we do look forward to seeing all of you back at the next session. They start up again at 1:30 Eastern time. So thank you guys.
Thank you.